Helen wiped the sweat from her face and looked out the window. Yes, it was so hot outside, and they would get an air conditioner only next week. How would she stand this heat? The woman sighed and began rubbing the tiles again, for she still had so much work to do, and she couldn't delay. When her vacation would be over, she wouldn't have time to do anything, so it was necessary to do everything in this week. Helen worked hard for a few minutes and then got tired again. She sat down on a chair with displeasure, taking off her gloves. The woman ruffled her hair with her hands, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and looked around. This apartment still needed a lot of investment, but it was better than it had been when she had bought it. She had already done a lot of work. Almost all the money had been invested in this apartment, so she had to do the cleaning by herself. Helen took a sip of water straight from a bottle, standing on a small table. The events that had changed her life instantly came back to her mind. She and her husband, Irvin, had left their child with their grandmother and were going to have a romantic weekend. But suddenly, she was ordered to go on a business trip for 3 days. Helen could not refuse because her career advancement depended on this trip. She left and her husband said he would miss her very much. Helen managed to get things done surprisingly quickly and cut her business trip down by a day. She decided not to say anything to her husband and surprise him. The woman was already in full swing, imagining how happy he would be when she suddenly appeared on the doorstep of their apartment. For greater effect, she thought she would prepare herself. Therefore, she went to the store and bought beautiful new lingerie. After the plane landed, the woman decided to stop by her best friend's house on the way to change into her new underwear. Helen did not call Stephanie in advance because they had texted a few hours ago, and Stephanie said she was definitely not going out tonight. Helen even hoped that Stephanie would do her hair and makeup. She was a real expert at that. In addition, Helen decided to borrow Stephanie's red stiletto shoes, which she had worn on her birthday. They would go perfectly with the new black lingerie, which was in Helen's bag. Anticipating meeting with her husband, Helen hummed to herself some romantic melody that she heard recently on the radio. After driving by cab to Stephanie's house, she hurried up to her floor and rang the doorbell. There was silence for a few seconds, and then she heard footsteps. The lock clicked and the door opened. Helen opened her mouth to ask her friend for help right away, but did not utter a word. What she saw surprised her so much that she was speechless. There was a man standing in front of her. Not just a man, but her own husband. Irvin was wearing nothing but sweatpants, and men's house slippers were on his feet. The pants were unfamiliar to Helen. Irvin didn't have such one. Helen looked at her husband with her mouth open, trying to understand what was happening. Irvin looked at Helen with frightened eyes, trying to think about the situation. At that moment, Stephanie appeared in the hallway. "Is that a delivery? So fast? They don't usually come earlier. Did you pay them off, darling?" And then Stephanie saw Helen. She became silent instantly, and her brightly coloured eyes opened wide. She was dressed in a beautiful fishnet robe and the same red stiletto shoes that Helen wanted to borrow. As soon as Helen heard the word darling, she finally understood everything clearly. What a fool she was! How did she not understand this whole situation immediately? There was a double betrayal. Her husband and her friend. Great. Helen didn't know what women do in such situations when they catch their husbands, so she just asked, "And how long has this been going on?" But Stephanie had already come to her senses. "Oh, Helen, You must have the wrong idea. My faucet was out of order in the bathroom. I did not know what to do and whom to call, so I called Irvin to come to help me." Helen mockingly looked at her from head to toe. "Well, of course. And you are meeting him like this. Apparently it helps him in his difficult business, doesn't it?" Stephanie mechanically pulled up the collar of her robe, and Helen looked at her husband and continued her speech. "I see that you've taken a responsible approach to this arrival. You brought him some sweatpants and slippers. You must have a serious faucet problem in there, and you, Irvin, are probably going to fix the faucet all night, so you changed into your home clothes." Irvin took a deep breath and realized that a scene could not be avoided. "Helen, let's calm down and talk like adults." And then Helen burst out, "What is there to talk about? You've been cheating on me behind my back. I just wonder how long you have both been fooling me. You listened to me when I told you about my problems, and then you immediately ran and told my husband about them, didn't you? And of course, both of you used to laugh at me while spending time together." Stephanie was silent, lowering her eyes and feeling uncomfortable in her high heels in front of Helen. And Helen felt like she was about to cry from resentment. She turned to leave, but suddenly stopped abruptly and rummaged in her bag. Then she pulled out a bundle with her recent purchase and threw it at her ex-friend. The package opened and the contents fell at Stephanie's feet. "This is my gift to you. Believe me, he'll love it. I know his tastes, and this lingerie costs more than you." Helen immediately filed papers to dissolve the marriage. Every day Irvin begged her to forgive him, said that it was some kind of mental confusion, swore his love, but all of this was really humiliating for Helen. The woman stood her ground and said that if he did not leave their apartment before all the formalities were complete, that she would take their daughter and go live to her mother. Only then Irvin packed up some of his things and went to live with a friend. Afterwards, Helen and Irvin sold their large apartment, which they had bought during the marriage. With her share of the proceeds, Helen bought this apartment, where she was now cleaning. The apartment was small and in need of repair, but it was the best offer the woman could find, and last week she and her daughter moved in with all their belongings. Helen even took a leave of absence specifically to make the apartment clean and tidy. The woman finished her water and put the bottle on the floor. Yes, there was still a lot to do, and the heat did not contribute to it at all. Of course, Helen suffered that her family life was ruined instantly. She had loved her husband, and he had trampled on their relationship and years of marriage, and it was obvious now that nothing good came out of their marriage. "Mommy, I'm done there. Will you give me another rag? I want to clean the windowsill some more," asked the daughter. Helen's face lit up with a smile, and she looked fondly at Lisa. How could she have thought that nothing good had come of her marriage? She had this clever and sweet girl who endured all the hardships of her parents' parting. She never blamed her parents for anything. Not only that, but she never got into their quarrels, never cried. It was obvious that Lisa was worried a lot, but she never once complained to her mother that she was scared. Helen stretched out her arms to her daughter and held her close. "Do you know how much I love you? I rarely tell you this lately, but you know that, don't you?" Lisa nodded with a smile and snuggled up to her mother. Tears came to Helen's eyes. She clutched even tighter to her child, who couldn't put into words all her worries and anxieties. "I'm sorry Daddy and I disappointed you, but that's just as it happened. I can't explain everything to you now, but you'll grow up and understand for yourself. I'll tell you everything as it is, but I can't right now." When Lisa first heard that she and her father were getting a divorce, she looked at her mother with her serious look right in her eyes and said, "I understand everything, Mum. You don't have to explain anything to me. My friend's parents got divorced last year. Her dad left for another woman. Her mother often cried and yelled at her for no reason. She even wanted to leave home, but she didn't have any money. I swore that I wouldn't tell anyone about this, but you are my mom. I can tell you, right? You won't tell anyone this secret, will you? I've seen how you suffer, so it's Dad's fault that we're not a family anymore. But I don't blame you or him. I love you both very much." Helen felt tears running down her cheeks. They were tears of happiness and regret at the same time. She was sorry that her daughter had had to go through such an experience. But that was life, and Helen was glad she had such support in the form of her 7-year-old daughter, who proved to be beyond her years of wisdom. The woman put her arms around Lisa's face and said, "Do you know who you are? You're my little psychologist. You're the best gift I've got. I'm grateful to your father for giving you to me. I don't regret marrying him for a second now. You are my joy and happiness." Lisa snorted childishly, shaking her pigtails, although it didn't match her wise words. "Mummy, we're girls, and we have to support each other, don't we?" Helen laughed through her tears at this statement. The girl was so young, but she could talk so maturely. Or maybe she just had to grow up too early. In any case, Helen was not alone, but with her best little friend, who will never betray her. She hugged Lisa and then said, wiping tears from her face, "Okay, I should stop crying. Let's have lunch. We still have so much to do. We can't stop." Lisa smiled happily now. "May I go down to the store for buns and donuts?" "Of course you can. There's money on the shelf in the hallway. Take it." Lisa quickly put on her sandals and left the apartment. Helen looked out the window as her daughter walked briskly, looking around. Helen smiled and realized that they would be fine, because it couldn't be otherwise.